Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Garrett Horner. In today's episode, I want to go back to the stage that just keeps on giving, stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia, where we see the performance, the Visma Lease bike performance director talk about Wout van Aert having his best performance ever on Col de Finestre. Ever? Okay, we'll talk about that, but let's go in first to Del Toro, because in Del Toro's topic, we see that Fabio Balto, the director sportif that was in the car for UAE Team Emirates, he produces some information about what he was telling Isaac Del Toro going up Col de Finestre. Okay, Col de Finestre, in case you haven't been paying attention, it was 3 days ago, stage 20 of the Giro. Now we're 2 days outside of the Giro d'Italia, and the pink jersey, Del Toro, that started on stage 20, lost it, of course, to Simon Yates, who went up the road and had Wout van Aert at the top of the summit, 7K after actually, and then Wout van Aert pulled him in the finish. So the topic of Del Toro, how he lost it, and Wout van Aert's performance going up to Finestre, his best performance ever, those are the topics of today's videos. When we go into UAE Team Emirates, Fabio Balto, and we look at the article, he reads in there, or he tells us from the article, that the kid, 21 years of age, in the pink jersey, Isaac Del Toro, could be lacking confidence or legs. Okay, tactically, if he's lacking form, then Del Toro raced a spectacular race on stage 20. He did everything correct. He picked one rider, he stayed in the wheel, he stayed in the draft, he followed all the way to the top, he lost, he didn't have any form, his legs weren't as good as Carapaz, but the draft kept him on the back wheel of Richard Carapaz. The tactic would have been perfect and spot on. But if we go back into Beyond the Coverage video yesterday, I told you guys that I believe, not Fabio Balto, but I believe that UAE Team Emirates, Isaac Del Toro, had better fitness and better legs than Richard Carapaz. It's arguable. I cannot argue with you if you want to say Richard Carapaz won stage 11 and was attacking left and right. I'll tell you Isaac Del Toro won stages 2. And so when we go into the stage, and if you look at yesterday's video, I told you that Isaac Del Toro bridged across that gap, that Carapaz and EF Education exploded at the beginning of the Finestre climb. Isaac Del Toro went across it, sat up, reached in his pocket, pulled out both hands off the bars, started eating and drinking whatever it was, put his left hand back on the bar, put his right hand and cleaned it off on his hip, and then put his right hand back on the bar. That tells me that he has incredible form, and it's better than Richard Carapaz. So now today's video with Fabio Balto's article saying that could be the 21-year-old kid lacked confidence in legs. We take away legs because I just explained to you he looked fantastic going up Col de Finestre the whole time of the 18-kilometer climb. So does he lack confidence? If he lacks confidence, it's difficult to tell, but throughout the 3 weeks, when we start that stage on Finestre and we're going up that climb, does he lack confidence at that moment? No way. If he lacked confidence, he would have been closer to Richard Carapaz throughout the start of the climb instead of not being worried about it. And then once he bridged across the gap, if he lacked confidence and he was scared, he wouldn't be reaching in his back pocket, pulling out food, and with both hands off his handlebars. I don't believe he lacked confidence, and I don't believe he lacked form. Now we go into the story a little bit deeper from Fabio Balto. And, of course, Rafael Michael had some mentions in that article too, so it's worth a read. But Fabio Balto says that he told Isaac Del Toro halfway up the climb to pay attention to Simon Yates. At that moment, halfway up the climb is before they reach the gravel section. So before you reach the gravel sections, 8 kilometers to go, halfway up would be before that, which tells us that the gap would have been anywhere from 20 seconds to about a 30-second gap, 40 at the most, when Fabio Balto's telling Isaac Del Toro, one time he says in the article that he told Isaac Del Toro to keep in mind Simon Yates. He said at some point in time during the race that they had definitely clearly said that Wout van Aert was up the road. He doesn't mention at that halfway point if he says Simon Yates, pay attention to him because he has Wout van Aert up the road. He may have said that, may not. We don't know for sure from the article. But we know halfway up the climb, 1K, maybe 2K, maybe 1K, maybe a few hundred meters before the gravel section, because halfway up's halfway. It's hard to tell, right? Where he's talking about in the car. But he never says that he said it again. He said one time. Remember, you're going up Col de Finestre. There's crowds up on the side of the roads. You're talking in race radios. Isaac Del Toro has a lot on his mind. Simon Yates is up the road. He knows that Wout van Aert is up the road if we believe the article. So if that's in mind, you got two riders up the road. One is gaining at about 30 seconds, give or take 10 seconds. Isaac Del Toro has a ton on his mind. We don't know when the radio response coming in from Fabio Balto to the young Mexican kid wearing the pink jersey at this moment. If that radio transmission's going into Isaac Del Toro, is he thinking about Simon Yates? Is he getting tacked right at that moment from Richard Carapaz? Is he seeing Derek G going up the road and Richard Carapaz attacking the Derek G, and he's tempoing his way back up and doing a maximum effort, while in his ear he's hearing, pay attention to Simon Yates? Is that all he's hearing? Maybe he doesn't hear it. Maybe the crowd's too loud. Maybe he's preoccupied. But Fabio Balto says he told them one time, with a 30-second gap, give or take 10 seconds, that he told them to remember about Simon Yates. If you're Fabio Balto and you're the director sportif of UAE team members Isaac Del Toro, and you have the race leader's pink jersey, and you can wrap up a Grand Tour win for UAE team members, and the first one of the 25 season, before we're getting ready to start the Tour de France, where Tadej Pogacar could go into the Tour de France and win there. That'd give him back-to-back Grand Tour victories. And then, of course, Tadej Pogacar possibly starts the Vuelta a España. We've already seen articles on that written. So maybe they can win all three of the season. At this moment, Fabio Balto believes that one time telling a 21-year-old kid to pay attention to Simon Yates going up the road was enough. Now, I say it's not even close to enough. I say that if you believe, like Fabio Balto said, that he may have lacked confidence, if you believe that and you're the director sportif, guys, you got to be on the radio. As soon as the gap gets up to 40 seconds, you have to be on the radio as Fabio Balto, director sportif, and you have to be saying every 500 meters, every 1 kilometer for sure to Isaac Del Toro, you have to start working. You have to start working with Richard Carapaz. That was Richard Carapaz's plan throughout the whole stage. Let Simon Yates go up the road. If you cannot drop with the first few accelerations at the beginning of the climb, if you cannot outright drop the pink jersey of Isaac Del Toro, the next plan was to let Simon Yates go. Carapaz's strategy and plan tactically was spot on, 100% perfect. The Ecuadorian rider was amazing with his tactics, and once it got to 40 seconds, his second plan of tactics on Col de Finestre, after he could not drop Isaac Del Toro, was to force Isaac Del Toro to be in front of him on the win, chasing Simon Yates. His director sportif of UAE team members, Fabio Balto, should have been saying, work with Richard Carapaz right now, because Simon Yates is too far up the road. Because Simon Yates has the big guy, Wout van Aert, waiting at the top of the climb for Simon Yates, and there is no way you can make up time after the top of the climb with just about 25 kilometers to go in the stage. If Simon Yates has Wout van Aert, no one is going to bring back the big guy. So Fabio Balto is certainly at fault for losing the first Grand Tour of the 25 season for Isaac Del Toro, and losing the chance for Mexico to grab their first Grand Tour ever with Isaac Del Toro is a catastrophic mistake. Now, I want to go into Wout van Aert. Hopefully you guys have stayed long enough to get to this section of the video, because Wout van Aert, Matthews, their head of performance there at Visma Bike, had posted up that Wout van Aert had his best performance ever. Best performance ever on Col de Finestre? I don't think so. I don't believe this whatsoever. We go a little bit deeper in that article. We see that Matthews states that with 1 hour effort, Wout van Aert produced his best 1 hour power numbers ever in his career. We see the Strava release that Wout van Aert posted up that it was best 1 hour power numbers ever. Okay, so what? It was your best power one number. Was it your best performance ever? Absolutely not. I have never needed to see my power meter or see my overall results of any race and power numbers to know if I had produced my best numbers. I can tell you factually, 100%, without a doubt, that Wout van Aert has not produced his best performance ever on Col de Finestre. Did he produce his best 1 hour power? Maybe he did, but it's irrelevant. If we look at the start of Col de Finestre, when they start with 31 riders, Mads Pedersen's on the front, dozen riders are going up the road, 11, 12 riders, whatever the number is, Wout van Aert's getting dropped. You want me to believe that just because he produced his best 1 hour power on Col de Finestre, that this was his best performance ever? Absolutely not. Now, why does it matter? Well, Wout van Aert's getting ready to go do the Tour de France, correct? So if he's getting ready to go do the Tour de France, and the head of sports for Visma Lease Bike is talking about how Wout van Aert had just produced his best performance ever in his history of his career, are you crazy? That's not even close to his best performance. I could take you back to the 22 Tour de France when they're going up Oudecombe on stage 18, where Wout van Aert dropped everybody in the break, and one was Thibaut Pinot, if I remember correctly. And Jonas Vingegaard was coming down with none other than Tadej Pogacar. Those two riders were coming off the penultimate climb, latched onto Wout van Aert. Wout van Aert drove it up Oudecombe and dropped Tadej Pogacar. Of course, I remember Tadej Pogacar crashed on that stage. But if you drop Tadej Pogacar along with everybody in your break and you went all the way up that climb to deliver Jonas Vingegaard to the summit of the climb, I could tell you without a doubt, even though it's not an hour-long climb, that it was better performance and better power numbers than what we saw on Col de Finestre from Wout van Aert on 3 days ago, the penultimate stage of the Giro d'Italia stage 20, that Wout van Aert did not produce those kind of numbers of the 22 Tour de France. But let's dissect that and go a little bit deeper and understand what the sports director is saying. Now, it's a fake story to be released out there, but if he actually believes it, it's a misleading story for sure, because if you say he produced his best performance ever, I can give you story after story that will definitely deny that. But if you say it's his best 1 hour number, I can't argue with that. But how could it be his best 1 hour number? Well, first off, Wout van Aert's power meter could be misread. So it could be reading a few watts higher and be off. All power meters, can vary a little bit from this way and that way. So that could lead you to believe that the number itself was actually better. Wout van Aert could be a little bit heavier, so maybe he's pushing more watts for that reason. But when it all boils down to, did he pull a 1 hour better number? Well, he produced it up on Strava, so he agrees that it is his best 1 hour number. But when we look at the actual details of it, what you got to remember is it's a 9.2% climb at 18 kilometers long. Power is not relative throughout descending, throughout flats, and throughout going uphill. It changes as the percentage of the road starts to go up. So as you go up in percentage of the road, it's easier to produce power. So let's go back to that Oudecombe stage in 2022, stage 18, where we know Wout van Aert dropped the whole break with Thibaut Pinot in there. We know that he dropped Tadej Pogacar. Yes, I remember he crashed Tadej Pogacar, but still he got dropped. And we know he delivered Jonas Vingegaard to win that stage 18 of the 22 Tour de France. Now we go into Finestre climb, that's 9.2 kilometers, and at 1 hour, well, first off, at 1 hour, Oudecombe's not 1 hour. It's about a 40-minute climb. And of course, producing the power at a 7.9% climb is harder to produce higher numbers than at a 9.2% climb. And again, Finestre does not step, it does not drop down, there's no dips. It's a steady grade all the way up, so it's easier to produce number. But if you're head of performance of Visma Lease Bike, you should be able to read body language. You should be able to read that power is different between climbs without a doubt. It's always different. And you should be able to read that when the climb starts, if Wout van Aert's getting dropped by 12 guys, he's probably not as good as Oudecombe. You should be able to read, or you might say, the performance director might say, well, he didn't have to go up the climb as fast as those 12 guys. Well, that's true. He doesn't have to go up as fast as those 12 guys, but he does have to get to the top before Simon Yates. And so if you're getting to the top before Simon Yates gets there, you're cutting it a little bit tight if you're getting up there 1 minute before Simon Yates and you started with 10. So keep that in mind. Wout van Aert, I believe, without a doubt, did not have his best performance on Finestre. And the reason why I bring it up is because when you're going into Tour de France, if that performance director is going over to management staff saying Wout van Aert is ready for the Tour de France, I'm telling you here on Beyond the Coverage that Wout van Aert is still not at his best. He came good throughout the Giro. He got better and better. He started sick, and that explains why his form's going up, but it is still not the type of form that we have seen from Wout van Aert. He is still number 5 best first-page rider and ahead of Matthew van der Poel after this Giro d'Italia. So I love the big guy. You know I do. I would put him on my team right after. If I couldn't get one of these 4 guys, Wout van Aert would be the next guy on my team that I'd sign. That's how much I love the big guy. But be sure, on Col de Finestre, Wout van Aert still has some improving to do before he gets to the Tour de France because, again, when we compare Finestre to the Tour de France rides of Wout van Aert, the Tour de France is the pinnacle of the sport. The The Giro has a less quality field, so throughout the 3 weeks of racing, Wout van Aert can find his form to come up because the level of the form is not as difficult, so it's easier to get fitter through the Giro than it would be at the Tour de France. And so when you get to stage 20, it's easier to find better legs because the racing hasn't been as hard, and because Wout van Aert's been sitting up at a lot of stages of the Giro d'Italia, where versus the Tour de France 2022, Wout van Aert was not sitting up. He was lighting the Tour de France up every stage, which has some kind of fatigue that goes into your legs when you get further into the third week that you have to add to that mythical number of watts per kilo when you're talking about Wout producing his best performance ever. It's ridiculous. Like and subscribe. You know I'll bring you guys the unsugared down, coated version of the analysis of the races. I'll see you guys on the next video real soon.